Hey, Fed heads, welcome back to another episode of Cigar Chat, broadcast around the world on the Armed Forces Radio Network and live on Facebook. Any of our live viewers, of course, feel free to leave us some feedback, give us some comments, give us some up thumbs, some smiley faces, some sad faces. Let us know what you think, how you're feeling. I'm Tripp. I'm here with my co-host, Jason. Jason, how are you tonight?
Doing good, trying to stay dry in this torrential downpour we're having.
Yeah, it's been really unusual. I mean, we're both in Portland, Oregon, which is kind of known for being really rainy. But the general atmosphere here is that it's barely raining all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. But it's just barely raining enough that things are wet. Like, it's been pouring this week, which is abnormal. Like, most people, like, I grew up on the East Coast, and I'm sure this is what happens like in Central America is like at maybe 4 in the afternoon or so, there's just a torrential downpour for an hour where it's like 2 inches of water in the matter of an hour and a half. And we tend to get like 2 inches over a weekend. Yeah. So it's a little bit different. But we're not here to talk about the weather. We're here on Cigar Chat to talk with Mr. Juan Martinez from Joya de Nicaragua Cigars. Juan, how you doing down there in Nicaragua?
I'm doing quite well, actually. Excuse my neighbor's dog, if you can hear him. But thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. So, of course, you're from Joya de Nicaragua. I wanted to start off just by kind of telling the people about the history of Joya de Nicaragua. People may or may not know that Joya is one of the oldest brands in Central America, and actually the oldest brand in Nicaragua, right?
Yes. Actually, like next year, 2018, we're turning 50 years. That even though in the big, the big scheme of things, it doesn't seem a long time for the Nicaraguan cigar industry, it is. And Joya de Nicaragua has the privilege of being the first factory of premium cigars to have been established in Nicaragua. So we are the first. We are the first in the Central American region, obviously after the Caribbean. So we're quite proud. It was established in 1968, originally founded by 2 Cubans that emigrated from the island after the Cuban Revolution. Their names were Juan Francisco Bermejo and Simón Camacho. Simón Camacho, by the way, is also the founder of Camacho Cigars in Honduras a few years later. So, and we've been doing business ever since without interruption, even in the midst of political dictatorships, revolutions, civil war, natural catastrophe, and we're still here. We are what we call our people survivors in many ways, in many respects. But to be honest, my family, this is a family-owned and operated company. It's 100% Nicaraguan. My family got into the cigar business in 1992, so actually 25 years ago. So as I say to many people, I didn't grow up under the shade of a tobacco plant like some of my prestigious colleagues in the industry. But we've been enjoying it and working hard to represent one of Nicaragua's pride, which is the cigar industry and the handmade cigars that we produce. And for 25 years, my father has been running the company, and he was responsible of sort of transforming the way we sold cigars, the way we blended cigars, and until today, the way we are expanding internationally.
Yeah, and so the next thing I want to talk about is the cigars themselves. So most people, I mean, if you're out there and you haven't smoked an Antaño, like, have you been living under a rock? What year did the Antaño launch? It was like the mid '90s.
No, actually, it was after the cigar boom. Just I'll add a little bit of history to the okay. product sense. So after the Nicaraguan Revolution ended in 1990, the Civil War ended. Peace came to Nicaragua, and Joya de Nicaragua was used to be a public company, nationalized company in the communist regime during the revolution, and it was privatized in 1990. And my father ended up investing and acquired the company in 1992. But between 1992 and 1994, there were only Hoya and a couple of other smaller factories that had established. And by 1996, when the cigar boom actually began, we had more than 60 factories established in Esteli, just in Esteli. As you know, the cigar boom created some of the best brands that we know today. Some of the great companies that are pioneers also in the cigar industry came to exist as a result of the cigar boom. Drew Estate being one of them, our U.S. distributor and partner, was established in 1997 when Jonathan came down to Nicaragua. Then you have Rocky Patel, even Perdomo, and some other brands were established during the cigar boom. And then in 1998, the cigar boom ended. And many of those factories and brands that were developed as a result of the boom went out of business, they were acquired, they went bankrupt, and only a few remained. So we went from having 60 cigar factories to less than 20 cigar factories in just a couple of years. But the main point is that during the cigar boom, Nicaraguan cigars were hot. In fact, any handmade cigar was hot. You could produce anything and they would ship directly from the production table. They wouldn't get the proper aging because it was sort of this excessive demand, hence the term boom. And we didn't have the opportunity to really work on the blends because we were focused. Everybody was focused on the quantity. Everybody wanted to get the cigars out of the door. So we really never had the opportunity to create great blends. We only had the same brand since 1968, which was Joya de Nicaragua, the original Joya de Nicaragua. And we were producing millions and millions of those cigars. And then the cigar boom ended, and we found ourselves with a demand that was less than a third of what it used to be. And we were left with warehouses of cigars and boxes of cigars that couldn't be sold. So my father went back to the team, and in 1999, they started thinking, it's the end of the millennia. A new millennia is coming. How are we going to survive in the future after this catastrophic market event, which was the end of the cigar boom? And they started developing and trying out and working with the distributors around the world. And it was the first intention to really create a different product for the company. From what we used to have in the marketplace. And back then, companies would have one brand, and that would be it. That was this trend of getting many brands out came in later. So they started experimenting, and they went to the tobacco suppliers that also had a big stock of tobacco, and they asked for the best possible and the strongest, the thickest tobacco in their warehouses. And they went to one company in particular that's called ASP Nicaragua, which has been our supplier partner for many decades, the Perez family. And they gave us, and they gave them, my father and the team, the thickest tobacco they could get. And they started experimenting, and they wanted that cigar that would kick your ass. It started like a joke at the beginning because nobody wanted to smoke a strong cigar. But ultimately, they stumbled upon this, this true character of Nicaraguan tobacco, that when worked well, it would give you a level of body and a level of strength, but also complexity and also great flavors all in one. And they started working and testing with the distributor, and they ultimately ended up with a blend, which is 100% Nicaraguan puro, meaning that all of the tobaccos come from Nicaragua. The wrapper comes from Jalapa, and the fillers come from Esteli. And they named it Antaño, which basically means yesteryear in Spanish. And why? Because in a way, they wanted to associate this blend with the original blend of how originally Joya de Nicaragua was perceived in the marketplace. Because when it came to the U.S. in 1968, for the first time, people found that Nicaraguan tobacco was very strong. Wasn't as strong as it is today, but it was stronger than the Cubans that people were used to in the marketplace. So that's how they decided to, bring back this essence of this differentiating factor of Nicaraguan tobacco in its body and strength. And they named it Antaño 1970, yesteryear 1970, alluding to that characteristics of the cigars back in the beginning of the 1970s and so forth. And that's how in 2000, and then introduced in the marketplace in 2001, Antaño 1970 came to be. When it was first introduced back then, people were not used to strong cigars. The beginning, it didn't go so well. In the first show, it did well, but it wasn't until the second show when people realized that how popular this power was going to become that the brand hit a home run. And it's been our best-selling cigars ever since. And we're actually quite proud of it, because even though a lot of people have pushed the bar up and up in terms of strength, there's been, I think now this trend has stopped, but over the past few years, there's been a trend to get in the strongest and strongest and strongest cigar, to the point where people sort of reach the limit and then are going lower and lower, looking more for flavor and complexity. So even though a lot of people have tried to create this powerhouse cigar, they haven't been able to replicate the blend of the Antaño 1970, and we're quite proud of that achievement.
Yeah, I mean, I've told this story on the show a couple times, that the first time I ever smoked one, I thought that I had the flu. I felt sick. I didn't know what was going on. I had never smoked a cigar that strong. This was like probably 2005 or so. And I just didn't know what I was getting into. And then a few years later, that kind of was the kind of cigar that I would gravitate toward. Because like many other consumers, that's just kind of where the market went. Everybody wanted something, that wasn't necessarily kick your ass strong, but it was like in your face strong. And I think the Antaño, for me at least, was just a little ahead of where the rest of the market was at that time.
It was indeed, but then the market caught on, and now you see Nicaraguan tobacco, the tobacco leaf, being the most popular tobacco. Even if it's not a puro, 100% made of tobacco, it has to have a little bit of Nicaragua. Go over all of the blend sheets of all the new brands that come out for the past 15 years, and Nicaraguan tobacco is in there, because it gives you that additional, flavor, that additional punch that you require to make a smoke really interesting. And that's what Nicaraguan tobacco gives you. Comes from the soil. You've been to the factory. We've had this conversation many times on the importance of the quality of the soil, the volcanic soil, and obviously the unique techniques that our tobacco growers and our farmers use to make sure that we get this, flavorful cigar.
Yeah. And actually, you mentioned that Nicaraguan tobacco is very popular. Before we move on to talking about the rest of the cigars, you had mentioned that I didn't realize that it was recently announced that in the first half of 2017, Nicaragua exported the most cigars to the U.S. out of every country, which is kind of incredible because, Nicaragua used to be like the little guy, right? Compared to Honduras and Dominican.
In 2000, for example, 15, 16 years ago, there were a few companies exporting, and it was somewhere between 20 and 20-something million cigars they would be exporting in the year. And now, according to CAA, which is Cigar Association of America, until half of this year, we've exported 12 million cigars more than the Dominican Republic. We've exported 70 million to the United States, only to the United States, and the Dominican has exported 58. And that's sort of a great achievement in two ways. First of all, last year was an sort of atypical year because we did export a lot. The FDA pushed many of us to bring to market a lot of products, so we actually sold quite a lot of products to the U.S. But this year, we're actually growing as an industry. I was looking at this number. Just give me 1 second. Let me bring it up for you guys so that you have it. This year, we are a few million cigars up than the same period last year, which is great because that means that even in the midst of so many challenges, political challenges, regulation and everything, people have not stopped enjoying cigars. And for us as Nicaraguans, it's quite a blessing because you guys, you smokers, are recognizing the talent and the quality of the work of our people, of Nicaraguans, of the
Mm-hmm.
boncheros, the roleras, all the people that work in Nicaragua with tobacco, and of our companies. We have the privilege of representing a collective of companies that, even though we're competition, we work closely together and we collaborate closely to make sure that we represent the best interest of the Nicaraguan cigar industry. And seeing these numbers, it's quite satisfying, but at the same time, it makes us proud to see that you guys keep enjoying. And that, as some people used to say, that Nicaragua is just a trend. It's not a trend. It's not a trend. Nicaragua is here to stay with cigars, not only in the United States, but also around the world.
I mean, and that's kind of been proven. I mean, Nicaragua is hotter than it was during the cigar boom, but it's been a natural growth this time. So it's not just going to suddenly fall off like it did at the end of the 90s. Because how many factories are in Esteli now? It's like 130, right?
No, there are close to 140 companies related to tobacco, in where we include tobacco growers, tobacco processors, box makers, label makers, and all of the activities related to the cigar making. But cigar factories, there are close to somewhere between 55 and 60. Okay. But most of them are small companies. You know, the small companies that are in each block, like making a few thousand cigars. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. But formal companies that together we represent around 95% of the production of Nicaragua. We are 22 factories, and there are 27 companies, including box makers, label makers, that we make up the Nicaraguan Chamber of Tobacco. It's basically the collective of companies that represent the whole Nicaraguan industry. So even though there are a lot of small companies, 22 are the big representatives one.
Okay. That's really interesting. It's just kind of really interesting to me, having been to Nicaragua in the last few years, just seeing the growth over 3 years in Esteli of kind of the tobacco culture there. We have a couple comments from the audience. So Don Bleeker has 2 comments. First one, he had to tune in to see the handsomest man in the cigar business.
I agree too. You are good looking, man.
Oh, thank you.
The hat makes it even better though.
So actually, and his next comment, I was going to bring up the hat. So his next comment is Nicaraguan cigars are the best in the world. Cuba's old news, which I completely agree with. The last time, I think it might have been the time before that I was coming through customs, and they said, "Do you have anything to declare?" And I said, "I have about 100 cigars," and they said, "None of those cigars are from Cuba, are they?" And I said, "Of course not. I just came back from Nicaragua," and I was wearing this hat, and I pointed and said, "I went to the Nicaraguan cigar factories." And he said, "Why would you go to Nicaragua? I thought Cubans were the best." And I said, "Nope, Nicaraguans." Taught that customs agent his lesson of the day. So well done, let's talk about the cigars a little bit more. So first, we've already talked about the Antaño. Let's talk about the red and the black next. They're interesting to me because they're a departure from what Hoya used to be. You're just kind of going in a completely different direction. Can you talk about those 2 blends a little bit?
Sure. This project, the Joya family, the Hoya concept, came to be because about 6 years ago that we were, trying to think about the future, the next 5 years, what type of products come. We started asking the question about our brand. We went to the market and we went traveling and we went to the stores and we made events and we asked people, so what's the first thing that comes to mind when you hear Joya de Nicaragua, when you see this brand and when you hear that name? And we got 2 responses, and I would say almost in equal proportion. The first one was that it's an old school brand.
Mm-hmm.
My father used to smoke it, or it was my first cigar that I ever smoked, or is my grandfather's brand. Awesome. That's, you can't top that, man. It's when people think and their first cigar is your brand, it makes you really proud. But at the same time, it had that old school factor because you guys, especially in the US, you guys want everything that's new, something exciting, something boutique-y. So what's old school doesn't necessarily mean translate into buying and smoking the cigar. So that was the first thing. And the second thing was that a lot of people precisely thought when they thought about Joya de Nicaragua, they thought about this brand, the Antaño. So they would immediately think about strength, body, full body. It's too strong. Oh, it kicks my balls. The same reaction that you had when you smoked the first one, and that was sort of like ingrained in the marketplace psyche that we saw retailers when people came into the store, they would say, "I want a strong cigar." They would immediately go to Joya Nicaragua, and the truth is that even though our best-selling cigar is a full-body cigar, most of our production is not full-body. It's actually mild to medium. So, it's good to be recognized in this niche of full-bodied and this niche of old-school brand, but we needed to have, a separate thing because we're closing the doors to a lot of people who, first of all, didn't want the old-school product, the traditional, the classic, and not everybody wanted this full-bodied cigar. So we decided to create this sort of on Jonathan Drew's words, dumbed down version of Joya de Nicaragua, which is basically this Joya, because everybody knows Joya. So it's sort of a simplified version of that, in where we wanted to capture the essence of Nicaraguan, focus on the flavor, on the smokability, on the enjoyment, on the friendliness. So we decided to create this family called Joya, starting with Joya Red, then Hoya Black, then incorporating Cabineta. There was a friendly cigar that would trump the second impression or the second myth that Joya only made strong cigars. That's why even the band is different. Everything is different because we wanted to make a clear difference in separation. And the second thing is that with respect to the message, we wanted people to feel more inviting, especially for the newer smokers. So we thought about trying to focus on the contemporary smoker because we don't call it younger because it's not politically correct. But the contemporary smoker that would try a brand that was exciting, that was, even though it's old, it's also new, it's fresh. So everything from the band, from the message, from the box, from the advertisement, everything is intended to the contemporary smoker. So that's how it came to be. It's sort of our product, a combination of a young executive team with our guys, together with the oldest, most experienced tobacco makers cigar makers in Nicaragua, which is our heads, my father and our general manager and our head of production, and together joining forces to create something new. And so far, people caught on to it, the message, both on the profile and the brand, and together as a family, it's been quite successful.
Yeah, I think, for me, I think the branding of the Joya lines is a really nice contrast to the classic lines, because now you've kind of got both of those segments covered, the people who want the old stuff and the people who want the new stuff, and they've each kind of got their own look that fits with what the product is. Before we take any more questions, we just got to take our first break here because I missed it, so we'll be right back after this message from one of our sponsors. All right, not sure what happened there, but the ad for some reason just didn't play. That's never happened to me before.
Guys? I think there's a Hoya hack.
So just in case the audio didn't play, because I'm not really sure, that segment was brought to us by Gurkha Cigars, makers of the finest cigars in the world. Try the 93 rated Gurkha Heritage. It's a really good cigar. We smoked it on the show a couple months ago. But now back to Joya de Nicaragua. So now that we've covered the the old new stuff, the Hoya lines. I want to talk a little bit about the Gran Reserva. So we actually did a show on it on sharing our pairings. We had an episode where we smoked it with a couple of different beers, and I was really impressed with the Gran Reserva because it's got all of the elements of the original Antaño, but just kind of the way I described it was it's kind of like the edges are just sanded down a little bit. It's a little bit smoother, a little bit less strong, but it's still got kind of all those flavors that you're looking for. So how did the Gran Reserva come about?
That was precisely one of the intentions to even though the Antaño line has been successful for almost 2 decades, we wanted to give some love to the brand. Over the past few years, we were very, very strongly pushing for the Joya family and everything that's new. But the truth is that we have a great brand, we have great tobacco, and we also wanted to take advantage of the window that the FDA forced onto us, that we had to recover grandfather brands. So Antaño Gran Reserva came actually the first time to the marketplace in 2005 as a limited edition.
I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so it was a limited edition in 2005. We decided to, okay, if this brand existed, it's already protected. We wanted to celebrate already something with the Antaño. So we decided to create this line extension, which is basically that. The same profile of the Antaño 1970, the original, but smoother. And this is given by the extra aging of the tobaccos that we're giving. All the tobaccos that we're using in this cigar have been aged a minimum of five years. So that's the first impression that you get, a smoother, a little bit creamier, not as strong. That's precisely the intention, but still full-bodied and full flavor.
Yeah.
And I think we did achieve it. We had to make 3 sizes, the same 3 sizes that we had in the original release of the limited edition in 2005, just because the regulation forces us. But it's doing quite well. It was introduced in the IPCPR show this year. It's still. Am I still on? Or
yeah,
Jason?
Okay. Jason lost his connection for a second. We've still got no video for him. There he is.
Okay, there he is. So it was introduced in the IPCPR. It's still heading to some of the shops that I think they haven't gotten it yet, but I think it should be available countrywide by now.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's available almost everywhere, and then it seems like some shops are just kind of still waiting on shipments and stuff like that. But within the next few weeks, I think everybody should have it. So the other thing that we did with the Gran Reserva is that now, you remember, we also have the Antaño Darko Rojo, which is sort of the other member of the family. Mm-hmm. So we brought them all together into one united family. It's called the Antaño family. So we have the 1970, the Gran Reserva, and the Darko Rojo all together bundled up in this beautiful family of full-bodied, robust Nicaraguan character, strong cigars. Yeah, and like I said at the IPCPR, I love the new branding on the Darko Rojo. I mean, it just fits right in line and looks great on the shelf.
Yeah, thank you.
And the Reserva looks great, too, with that second band. I think it's a good differentiator to kind of make it stand out from the standard Antaño 1870 line.
Well, it's the only thing is that it's an extension. We don't call it a new brand precisely. It's just an extension of the original 1970. We're using the same tobaccos. It's almost the identical blend. The same packaging. The box is a little bit different, adjusted to the new labeling requirements and everything. But that was it. Just a small tweak, differentiating, and you get it on the profile, which is the ultimate intention.
I like the box press on that too. Something about a good box press on a cigar. I don't know what it is, but
always love a box press.
It's just nice.
Which is interesting. You know, we were introducing this last month in Germany for the European market, and the Europeans feel completely opposite about box press, and I was surprised. And they were like, "No, it's not gonna work because it's what's up with the box press?" And they were asking a lot of questions because I don't know. It still hasn't gotten. And I was asking, there's some brands like, Padron, everything is box press. No, it doesn't sell. Or some other brands, people don't gravitate toward. This doesn't seem natural to them, apparently. But in the US, it's quite opposite.
Yeah, I think the reason for the European difference is that in Europe they've been smoking mostly Cubans for 70 years. And then in the last decade or so is when Nicaraguans have really started, or not just Nicaraguans, but non-Cubans have really started to grow exponentially. And I don't know. I think maybe they're just not used to it. It's weird.
Yeah. El Cacham. We found that we've been selling in Europe for many decades now, and we actually have quite a good position in most of the European markets. And we've seen how in the last 5 to 7 years, there used to be before a big difference in what the American Maduros and what the Europeans wanted: smaller ring-gauge cigars, longer cigars, a little bit more classical, milder, medium-bodied.
Mm-hmm.
But now we've seen how, for example, things like this, social media, and the exposure that we get all over the world has sort of made this unification of taste. And we see now a lot of Europeans asking for what the Americans are smoking, and the Americans asking curiously for what the Europeans are smoking. It's just interesting because sometimes we don't value enough the power of social media in our industry. And you guys have been instrumental to getting the word out, not only in the United States, but around the world in people's, taste, evolution, and education about cigars. So it's quite interesting to see that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a double-edged sword too, because everybody now knows about the cigars. You're no longer just marketing to a specific country. If you're on social media, you're kind of marketing to the whole world, whether you like it or not. But at the same time, I think that's kind of what brought on the what's new kind of mentality that everybody's been chasing for the last few years, and that is kind of being messed up by the FDA. Which actually, that brings me to an audience question from Don Bleecker. He wants to know what's next for the Hoya line. Maybe a sun-grown wrapper?
That's a good question. So, we try to move away from that tendency because it sort of goes against the principle and the nature of premium cigars. Yeah. And again, we've spoken about this many, many times on how long it takes for this cigar to become what it is, to really have its nature, its personality and everything. From the moment that the seed is planted in the field to the moment the cigar reaches your hand, 4, 5, 6 years have gone by. In the case of this cigar, more than 5. So it's a very time-intensive product. When you go to the factories and you see people working at a slow pace, you age the cigars, you take your time, you make sure that this cigar is not fresh, which is a contradiction to everything else. We want these cigars to not be fresh when they get to the humidor. We want them to be well aged, and that takes time. So bringing a new brand from the moment that it was conceived to the moment that it reaches your hand, it takes no less than 1 year. Generally, somewhere between 2 or 3, depending on if you have the tobaccos available or not. So it's sort of a contradiction when we push towards new as fast as we can.
Yeah.
Because this cigar has been in the works for almost a year, a little bit more than a year actually. Now that we're in October, so Don, I may ask you, have you tried this cigar yet? So this is what's new right now. Once you smoke your first box, then I'll tell you what's new. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna answer that question, but it's important you guys know that even though we bring as many cigars as we can to the marketplace, we want to give it time so you guys can enjoy the cigar, appreciate what goes behind making the cigar, and really make it a personal favorite of yours. And we invest a lot of love and time and dedication to be able to get that. We don't want to be ephemerous, Now you don't see a lot of people buying boxes of cigars. You see people buying the equivalent of a box with 2, 3, 4 cigars of many stuff. You got 25 cigars, 20 cigars, but not of one brand. So that also makes a lot of creates a lot of uncertainty to us because we don't really know how successful a brand is. I would say about a year in, that's when we really know if a brand has been successful. If people have reordered it, if we've gotten great reviews, if people are buying it. If before 1 year we haven't gotten any good feedback, doesn't mean that the brand is dead. So it takes time. So this cigar was introduced in July. We'll know if it's successful if by the next show people are reordering it, and you guys are smoking it, etc. But for next year, it's quite a special year. Just to concretely respond to Don's question, we're turning 50 years, so we have a couple of interesting things. So we're bringing back to the U.S. one of our legacy brands that is not available to the marketplace, and we've gotten many people asking about it. We'll very likely bring the original Joya de Nicaragua to some specialized shops that are considered our good friends and partners around the country. So you'll be able to smoke once again the original Joya de Nicaragua in the U.S. market next year. Then we're also working on a very special 50th anniversary cigar. I can't talk much about that because it's, that's the type of projects that people would cut my head off if I told too much. But especially the marketing team who are probably listening, and they're like, why? And then by the end of the year, you'll see a new member of the Hoya family in this process of getting the red, black cabineta, and then you'll see a fourth member of the Hoya family, which will basically complement the smoking experience from the mild cabineta to the medium red, then to the fuller bodied black, and then to something quite extraordinary that's going to be part of the whole Hoya collective.
All right. And it looks like we lost Jason there, but we have to take a break anyway, so we'll be right back. Thanks. I love your answers, Juan. They're fantastic. We'll be right back with more audience questions.
This show is sponsored by Cigar Oasis. Don't spend all your time worrying about your cigar wrappers cracking, splitting, or falling apart from humidity fluctuation issues. Set it and forget it by choosing Cigar Oasis, a professional solution which provides equal distribution of humidity with precise electronic controls. Monitor your cigars through the internet using the Smart Humidor Wi-Fi attachment. Why don't you spend all your time enjoying your cigars and relaxing, and let Cigar Oasis protect your cigars? Cigar Oasis has solutions for any humidor. Make sure you set it and forget it today.
No, I don't remember.
I'm going to go to this view for a moment. Oh, we got to get Jason back in here because Jason dropped off the call somehow. And it has messed up our window. So our video looks weird now to everybody. But we can keep talking. So we've still got a bunch of audience questions here. There we go.
I think I'm back now. I lost power for a moment.
Oh, you lost power?
Yeah.
I was noticing it was raining real hard.
It just
and I'm the
blinked
one
for a
in
moment,
Nicaragua, man.
Yeah, usually it's our guest in Nicaragua that's having power outages. So I have two questions from Chico, right? But I'm going to combine them together. What is your opinion on the Antaño Lancero? And why do Lanceros taste different than a larger ring gauge? So for my opinion, I love the Antaño Lancero. I think that it's I've always had a couple burn issues with it, but that's kind of the nature of having heavy Nicaraguan tobaccos. You can't get something that small with that much heavy tobacco in it to burn easily. But the flavor is there, and they're not as overpowering in nicotine as the rest of the sizes are. They've got all the flavor without some of that kick. What do you think, Jason?
I love Lanceros because they really highlight the wrapper of a cigar. And I think that particularly with the Antaño series, you get it's like the wrapper gives you that kind of Nicaraguan earthy heaviness of it. So so you really notice that quality in the cigar.
And I'll let Juan answer the last part of that question. Why do Lanceros taste different?
Okay, so can you hear me well? Because you guys cut up a little bit. Okay, so there are two parts to this question. So the personal smoker one, which is that I love Lanceros. I personally enjoy them very much. For me, the dark, the type of tobacco that we use for the Antaño, it's a complicated tobacco to, as you mentioned, to use in a small ring gauge cigar because it's a very thick texture of tobacco that has a lot of burn issues by itself. When we use this wrapper, we know that we're going to have challenges, but at the same time, it's what gives the flavor to the tobacco. So it's sort of a balancing out. So you will have burn issues with a thicker wrapper, especially a Nicaraguan wrapper. So I have that issue that I don't like it. I don't like that issue with my Lanceros. So I generally enjoy more like the Cabineta Lancero, for example.
Oh, that's a fantastic
that one is
Lancero.
awesome because you don't have to worry about the burn issue or and even the Clásico Lancero or the Clásicos thin gauges are great smokes because they are designed to use this thinner tobacco that has better combustion. Now, the commercial side of it is that even though everybody loves Lancero, nobody buys Lancero.
Yeah, exactly.
So for every cigar maker, everybody asks for a Lancero, but nobody buys a Lancero. So even though we make the Lancero, is by far not our best-selling cigar.
It's the best size that never sells. That's the quote that always comes back.
Exactly. But again, I think your point on the thick tobacco is the most relevant in this type of discussion. And any small ring gauge cigar, in my opinion, will capture best flavors. It will capture best complexity too, just because you have the possibility of each tobacco given to the whole combination a little bit of itself. When you have bigger ring gauge cigars, when you go to a 60 ring gauge cigar, then you have to add a lot of tobacco to make it burn and to make it smoke. So you have this sort of overpowering of one type of tobacco, and you lose this flavor notes of the other one. So you have a lower proportion of wrapper as a proportion of the whole cigar, lower proportion of binder, and then you have more proportion of fillers, especially secos and visos. So you'll get more of that than the flavors that you get in a thinner ring gauge. So anything below 50 and going to the Lancero, that for me, it's ideal.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think for me, like 44 to 46 is kind of my ideal ring gauge. Like I'm not smoking it tonight because I've smoked all mine, but the Hoya Black Nocturno.
Yes.
That size is fantastic. And we're going to keep on the Lancero train because we got a bunch of Lancero questions that came up after that one.
Go ahead.
So Don Bleeker is asking, he wants to know if there's ever going to be a Hoya Black Lancero because he's itching for one of those.
If it was for us, we would do it, especially for you, my friend, Don. Now that you've participated so much, I think you've earned your Hoya Black Lancero. Unfortunately, it's not gonna ever hit the marketplace, at least not on the current situation, because FDA prohibits us to bring a new product that wasn't in the market before August 2006 to the market. And unfortunately, we did not have the opportunity to make all of the sizes in all the blends. So we are limited in being able to bring the Lancero size in all of our blends. So we'll probably be able to do it if you find me on the street and you're able to join an event with us. I'll probably be able to give you, it's also apparently illegal, give you one from my own personal stash, but you won't be able to find it commercially because of your beautiful and open and free-minded government.
Well, coincidentally, first, Don Bleeker is actually Canadian. So, I mean, you could still send some up that way, but he's also going to be in Esteli November 27th and wants to know if he can swing by the factory and get his weasel on.
Well, yeah, let me write that down then. And you're gonna have to become our Hoya Black Lancero ambassador then.
Oh man, I'm jealous of that. Jason, I've been hogging all the talk time here. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, so something
very quiet, huh?
I was kind of curious about is that over the years, have you had other cigar manufacturers or brand owners come to you and sort of ask you for bits of advice, given your own and Hoya's long experience with Nicaraguan tobacco and like the history? It seems to me that if I was new, Hoya is one of those companies that I would look to for some sage advice of sorts.
Yes, we do get that a lot, actually. In fact, back in the beginning of the 1990s and in the 1980s, Hoya our factory was considered the University of Tobacco. It was the only operating factory. So if you wanted to actually learn how to make cigars, package cigars, you had to go through those halls. So in fact, we made a calculation a few years ago that around 7 to 8 out of 10 of the heads of production in different factories in Esteli had gone through our factory. And it's surprising when you look how many people and how many people's parents learn to make cigars in the factory. It's quite astonishing. And we have that on the books for us. The second thing is more of the brand owner type of experience. We do get a lot of people coming to us and asking us to make cigars for them or with them. We don't do a lot of private labels. We do with some partners like Steve Saka, Sobremesa, and Don Barton and Tobacco and Co. and Omar de Frias and some other private customers. But they come to us because they believe in and they know and they trust the capabilities and the experience of our factory. And that's the best tribute that you can pay. Someone like Steve Saka deciding to work with Joya de Nicaragua beyond the friendship element, because my father and him are very close and we're good friends. But beyond that, his trust and his belief in our factory is the best compliment you can ever get. So yes, there are a lot of people coming by. There's also a lot of people now in Esteli that know a great deal about cigar making. You have great cigar makers in Esteli, from the guys at Drew Estate, the guys at Plasencia, the guys at My Father Cigars, the guys at AJ, all of them. And all of them inject their own DNA and their own style and their own personality to cigar making. So nowadays, that is less because there's less that we can teach to some people that are making great cigars every single year. So, but by the fact that we're the oldest and everybody knows that, and they know that they can count on our experience if they need improvement in their process and improvement in the cigars, and even control details in the production that we've learned to control over the decades in Esteli. It's always a great compliment to have.
And we're going to take our last break here, which isn't a real break. We don't have a video for it. And Chico Ray has led me directly into my next segue. So his question is, when is a representative from Hoya going to be in Orlando, Florida? Download the Drew Diplomat app. This section is brought to you by Drew Estate. If you download that app, you can find out when all of the Hoya events in the entire country are. And it's just a nice way to be able to find out about events, because you can put in that you're in Florida and it'll show you every event that they've got scheduled for the entire state. And you can figure out when that next Hoya event is in Florida, and whether or not Juan's going to be there.
It's actually a great app.
It really is. I use it. I like it. You can, of course, check in your cigars, win some free stuff from Drew Estate and Hoya, and they have stuff from all of the brands that are represented there.
So, responding to your question, I'll probably be in Orlando in the first part of next year. We are finishing up our visits this year, but we'll probably be doing a couple of special events in the northern Florida region in the first part of next year. So you'll have to find us in the Drew Diplomat app, and we'll smoke a cigar together. Maybe a Hoya Blackland, maybe not. We'll see.
You got any more questions, Jason? I don't want to hog all the time.
All right. So next question for me is that of the Hoya lineup, like if you have a day where, say, you're going to be smoking like 4 cigars or something during the course of that day. Do you have kind of an order that you like to go in?
Yes. Well, for us in the business is sort of atypical because we have to be smoking a lot of different stuff. So it's not like we have a collection like you guys would. We have a collection, but we don't get to smoke that often. That collection, because we have to be, testing different products and different projects that are in the works from us or from our customers. But if I would start the day, I would generally start with a Hoya Cabineta. That's my morning cigar, my coffee cigar. The first cigar that I light up when I'm at the factory or when I'm traveling, it will be a Cabineta. Just because it's mild, but it's also very creamy, it's silky. For me, it's like smoking a cappuccino. Sort of that texture, that fluffiness of the smoke. It's for me, it's delicious. That's also the cigar that I smoke when I'm out. Camping or fishing or doing stuff like that. That's a very friendly cigar to enjoy. Then more towards the afternoon, I'll gravitate towards something fuller. I'll probably have a red or a black, and then more in the afternoon, evening, I'll go towards this, like an Antaño fuller body, just because it's how my body is it's craving the body, the cigar flavors and the strength. Probably I will be smoking sometime during the day a test blend or something from some other guy who gave me a cigar to test. We smoke. I personally smoke a lot from other companies, from other cigar makers, just because I love, I'm a cigar smoker too, so I enjoy what other people are making and how they're, I like to experience their take on a particular variety of tobacco or a particular origin of tobacco. So I will be smoking something from outside of our own factory, obviously Steve Saka's products or Omar's products. We would be smoking something like Nick Melillo's product, El Huehuense, or something from him, or something from my father's cigars, or something from Willie Herrera, Drew Estate. He's always giving a sample to try to test, so we're constantly figuring out what he's trying to do. So that sort of takes all of our time, all of our smoking time.
Willie reminds me of you in that way, in that if you're near him and he has a test blend, he's going to be like, try this and tell me what you think. There are a lot of people that hide their test blends like in a back room somewhere and they're smoking them all themselves. But the two of you are two people who every time I've ever met you, you're like, try this and tell me what you think.
Well, for us, we have a process, and the process involves the feedback of people who know and who enjoy. And we know that you guys are that type of crowd that we like your opinion. And we know that we're going to get some honesty, maybe not complete honesty. You won't tell us that it sucks, but we'll see it. We'll see it in your eyes. But it's important every time we're developing something, because we try to make cigars that we enjoy, but cigars that people enjoy, even if it's not something that we completely enjoy. If we would make our own cigars only, we probably would be out of business by now.
You can't only make your favorite.
Excuse me?
You can't only make your favorites.
Yes.
That's just not how the market works.
No, exactly. So we like to have people feedback, and then we start calibrating depending on people's reaction and comments. So you asked me earlier if the cigar that we smoked during your visit this year was something that was going to come out this year. I don't remember, to be honest. We always giving out test blends, and some are for newer projects. Someone don't even see the light of day. They just get thrown in the library of blends that we have, and we start from fresh. So it's quite interesting also to get people's feedback, and especially because you get people's engagement, because they want to see if it's a test blend. They want to see what it ultimately becomes. So it's quite interesting also to get people's attention in that way.
And that generated a lot of comments. So one of them is from John O'Larnick, who's watching. He says he loves that you keep in touch with other makers and what they're doing and what they're making, and that you're just a cigar smoker. He says he's a chef, and he does the same thing. He's not only going after, he's not only eating the dog food. He's he's trying everything because he wants to know what other people are doing, and you just enjoy it. We've got another question from Don Bleecker. He's been asking a lot of questions tonight. He's really working for those Black Lanceros.
I hope he's not the only guy watching us tonight, because
definitely not.
Okay.
He's just the most vocal. He wants to know what your favorite rum and cigar pairing is. I think I know what the rum is.
Yes, I'm very patriotic in that way. So Flor de Caña is always a great pairing. If you have a Flor de Caña 12-year or 18-year with a Cuatro Cinco, is the ideal combination. Not only because for the Cuatro Cinco we had tobacco that was aged in vintage oak barrels that were previously used to age a rum. Doesn't have anything to do with one or the other, but they pair really nicely with one another. But to be honest, my favorite pairing so far is between the Hoya Black and a local craft beer that if you're ever in Nicaragua, it's called Moro Potente, and it's called Lado Oscuro. So we are actually good friends with the guy that makes the beer, and his beer was inspired on Hoya Black. He was smoking Hoya Black, and he wanted to replicate this in a beer. So it actually pairs beautifully together. So that would be my favorite pairing at this moment. If you ever got the chance to be down in Nicaragua and ask for a Moro Potente, which it's also, by the way, the name of a big mountain in Esteli, Moro Potente, Lado Oscuro, which means dark side, and the Hoya Black, that's the ideal pairing.
The last time I was in Esteli for Cigar Safari, I think it was in March, Henry brought us to a Finca Sumesa, and we tried the Moro Potente beers. They were very good.
Yeah, it's a craft. It's a Nicaraguan craft beer. You guys have, many options, many more options than we do. But it's quite interesting to have that perspective of also a Nicaraguan craft guy making this beer inspired on one of our cigars. So it's also a great thing.
Jason, do you have any closing questions? I'm going to go through the comments one more time and see if we have any other burning questions.
Yeah, go for it. I think I'm good. I'm interested to try that beer. That sounds good.
It's really good. You can't. I mean, you're not going to find it at the supermarket anytime soon.
No.
You really have to go to Nicaragua to find it. But it is pretty good.
That Hoya Black pairs well generally with kind of like a darker beer.
Mm-hmm. It does.
Yeah, I think that I forgot the name of it already. Whatever their dark beer was, I think it's kind of in between a porter and a stout.
It is a stout. It's called the Lado Oscuro, dark side.
I think that's it for the audience questions.
You guys were shy tonight, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, we had
a lot of racy questions like the ones that you guys give us during the Cigar Safari. You always all the racy stuff.
Don says he's going to be seeking out some Moro Potente when he's there next month.
Please do.
Yeah, it's really good.
Reach out to us, social media at Hoya Cigars, Don. So when you're down there, you can come by, visit if you have the opportunity, give a tour of the factory, but also maybe get some samples for you.
And actually, that brings me to what my next question was, which is where can people find Hoya Cigars online? If they want to get in touch, if they want to follow you guys, if they just want to get more information.
At Hoya Cigars everywhere in Twitter. You can reach us via Twitter, via Facebook, via Instagram, everything at Hoya Cigars. The webpage, hoyacigars.com. Basically, you can, and you just, if you need anything from us, particularly, just email and they'll forward the comments to us, and we'll be on top of it. So at Hoya Cigars, all the social media.
All right, Juan, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure, as always. And thank you, Jason, for joining me and helping me out with the interview.
It was my pleasure.
And, of course, thank you to everybody watching on Facebook, everybody who commented, left a thumbs up or a like, or a sad face or whatever your feedback was. And thank you to all of our podcast listeners and all of our armed forces listeners. You guys are out there doing things we're not built to do, and we appreciate you, protecting our freedoms. Everybody have a great day.
From Nicaragua, I want to thank everybody for listening, for watching us, and also to the troops. Even though we are in the middle of Central America, you guys represent us, and we are very proud of you guys. So thank you very much for all the sacrifice that you guys do for the whole world.